Samsung has just released the Exynos 2600 with the Galaxy S26 series, and it feels like a real upgrade rather than just an annual refresh. The CPU now features all big cores, the GPU's performance has improved dramatically, and the connectivity speed is just unmatched. While the Exynos 2600 brings serious upgrades over the Exynos 2500, the real question is, how does it perform against its biggest rivals, the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 and Dimensity 9500? We'll look at the spec sheet, benchmark numbers, and important differences to figure it out. Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 versus Dimensity 9500 versus Exynos 2600. The differences you should know. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 and Dimensity 9500 were announced in September 2025, built using TSMC's advanced 3nm process node. 3 months later, the Exynos 2600 arrived as the world's first mobile chipset to use the 2nm AA process, offering enhanced efficiency and thermals. Performance. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 offers an 8-core CPU featuring third-generation Oryon cores, while the Dimensity's 8-core CPU includes ARM's C1 Ultra, C1 Premium, and C1 Pro cores. Unlike them, the Exynos 2600 features a 10-core CPU comprising C1 Ultra and C1 Pro cores. The Snapdragon chip offers the highest peak clock speed of 4.6 GHz, while the Dimensity 9500 peaks at 4.21 GHz, and the Exynos 2600 peaks at 3.8 GHz. This helps the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 achieve better performance during demanding tasks. For graphics-intensive workloads, the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 relies on the Adreno 840 GPU, which delivers excellent gaming performance and ray tracing capabilities. Plus, it comes with a full suite of Snapdragon Elite gaming features to further enhance the gaming performance, stability, and battery efficiency. The other two chips, the Dimensity 9500 and Exynos 2600, also deliver smooth gaming performance and support ray tracing. Plus, they integrate a range of features to improve the frame rate and the overall performance. Notably, the Exynos 2600 features Heat Path Block, HPB, for the first time on a mobile chipset, while the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 and Dimensity 9500 rely on phone-level passing cooling solutions such as vapor chambers and graphite sheets. AI and NPU. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 features a hexagon NPU with agentic AI capabilities, enabling a proactive on-device AI assistant for a personalized experience. The Dimensity 9500 with MediaTek NPU 990 NPU also supports agentic AI, but it isn't explicitly mentioned on the Exynos 2600 official page. However, the latter, with 32K Mac NPU, offers on-device inference, visual perception system for proactive camera AI, and Noda AI integration for enhanced offline processing.
Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 versus Dimensity 9500 versus Exynos 2600. Benchmark numbers. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 delivers the best result in the Geekbench CPU test. It scored 3,725 points in the single-core test, which is about 7% higher than the Dimensity 9500, 3,452 points, and about 22% higher than the Exynos 2600, 3,040 points. In multi-core performance, however, the Exynos 2600 delivers a noticeably better score than the Dimensity 9500, scoring 10,290 points versus 10,128 points. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 is miles ahead of them with a total score of 11,318 points. On the Antutu platform, the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 has scored close to 3.9 million points, putting it well ahead of the other two. The Dimensity 9500 scored 3.5 million, and the Exynos 2600 scored 3.2 million. More important is the breakdown of the total score, which offers clearer insights. It shows a stronger CPU for the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which scored 1.16 million points, followed by the Exynos 2600, 1.06 million points, and the Dimensity 9500, 1.03 million points. The Snapdragon chip also scores the highest in the GPU test among the three chips, with a total of 1.56 million. The Dimensity 9500 is just behind it with 1.41 million score, while the gap widens with Exynos 2600, which has scored just 1.21 million points. Memory performance, however, favors the Exynos chip over the other two. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 takes the top spot here as well, with the best score of 7786. The Dimensity 9500 sits below it with 7,163 points, and then comes the Exynos 2600 with 7,061 points. However, the order changes in the low score. The Dimensity 9500 surprises with the best low score of 4,092 points. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 and Exynos 2600 achieve a low score of 3,753 and 3,280 respectively. This results in better stability on Dimensity 9500. According to benchmark results we've seen so far, the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 offers much more promising CPU and GPU performance than the other two, while the competition between the Dimensity 9500 and Exynos 2600 is closer. The benchmarks alone do not tell the full story. Therefore, we've included a section below that discusses the camera, connectivity, and other important aspects.